Can you please attention? Here are we are starting our technical track one. Dan Garner.
Thank you. Okay, everybody hear me okay? Yeah, good, right. So yeah, as Jay said, this is the technical track, first session while you're all still awake, which is good. I'm sure by the end of the day you'll be flagging. It's entitled The Importance of Developer Experience. And if you weren't in the keynote, you won't know who I am. I'm Dan Garner. I'm CEO of OnTap and ATOC. My background is a developer, so I still write code, believe it or not. I talk from experience rather than just being a CEO of a business. And developer experience is a term that is close to my heart because not only do I employ developers, but as I said, am a developer. So I understand the importance of that. But before we can really begin, we need to understand what developer experience is. And we've probably heard of customer experience when we're talking about our clients' websites, about how a customer smoothly goes through a website to make a purchase. Developer experience has got several meanings, but for me, it's about the tools that we use as a developer. It's the tools that we use to do our job and the impact that they have on our work. And we're going to see some things, and some things that we've done, things that we've failed doing, and things that we've done right, and we're going to be able to give every developer a chance to test this using a thing that we built at the end. And we'll provide that for free. But we'll start with DX. So DX is developer experience. And the developer's view on this is key to understanding what the problems can be and how those problems can be solved. And when we think about that, we think about the toolbox the developer uses. So that includes the IDE that you use, which really doesn't matter. It could be PHP Storm or VS Code or Notepad. It doesn't matter. As long as you can write code, you write code. The toolbox obviously is linked to the operating system that you're using, Windows, Mac, Linux, whether you use Docker or MAMP or native apps for PHP, Nginx, MySQL, Elastic. All of these things contribute to an individual developer's own toolbox. And we've got little smiley faces next to all of those at the moment because that's quite an easy thing to deal with. But of course, we're doing Magento development, so nothing's ever really easy with Magento. And difficulty is just around the corner. So things like RabbitMQ and Varnish add complexity to that in general, and that obviously filters down to a developer's toolbox and how they use that. But a developer's assumption is that their toolbox is the solution to how they get good DX. And that's nearly always right. Because everything works fine until it doesn't. That's the point, right? And there can be problems, and there can be many reasons for problems in that toolbox. So some of the things we'll explore what those problems might be. So as a developer, I might be asked to work on multiple projects at the same time. It's fairly typical in a support kind of relationship where you're not just working on one project. You might be given 3 or 4 or maybe more. Each of those has different requirements from client to client. Maybe the platforms are different. And that evolves. Recently we've gone, all of us, from 7.4 to 8.1. Magento 2.4.6 beta is out now. We've now got 8.2 compatibility to bring into that equation as well. And that all impacts the developer's toolbox. and by extension, the developer experience. So that can cause problems, as can running different versions of Node. There might be even situations where clients need different versions of Composer. So as a developer, now I need to know more than just the code. And the solution that I thought I had, that toolbox, is now not the solution, it's the problem. Because I've got these projects where I'm potentially getting issues, and now my DX, my developer experience, is bad. And then, of course, it breaks. And it breaks when you least want it to. And the reasons it can break: too many projects, your computer's resources are maxed out, everything's running too slow, situations where one project's working fine, but the next one isn't, and it's just a headache. And we all know as developers, we often need somebody else's help to resolve those. And often in many agencies, that person to fix those is an internal resource, but their resource is in short supply. This is somebody who's probably a systems administrator, DevOps guy. He's the guru, but he's grumpy. He doesn't want to fix the problems. You should be fixing them yourself. And it's difficult to get stuff done. And you begin to think as a developer, I'm a developer. I just want to write some code. I'm not a systems administrator. But working with Magento and other platforms as well does force you into being more of a systems administrator than some developers ever wanted to be. So the employer's view of this, and this is where I share my perspective on this because I'm an employer as well. So our view is the impact of all of this can be considerable. Slower project onboarding. So we bring on a new project. Getting our developers working on that project takes longer because they have to set it up, new versions of PHP, all the problems we talked about. You can get hours or days lost mid-project. So mid-project is terrible because there's a deadline. And then a developer on the team can't continue until they get help because they've got environmental issues. That's a big problem. It's also slower to onboard new hires. So you bring on a new developer, they've got their own system, their own way of doing it. Worked before doesn't work with your projects. That's a problem for the employer. And all of these delays are costing money. Of course, that cost can't really be charged to the client. Your client doesn't want to see on an itemized list of their bill or invoice environmental issues, or developer couldn't get the project set up. Because they'll just send that back and say, well, why am I paying for that? Right, that's your problem. You fix it, I'm not paying for that. So, that's 100% cost. And because it's a cost, that reduces the company's profitability. And I know the developers in the room are there to write code, but you need to realize that you do influence the impact. It's not your fault, but those problems you're experiencing are not helping your employer and their relationship with the client's project you're working on. And as well as money, there is also a well-being impact here to consider as well, because the delays frustrate project managers. They don't understand why the developers can't work at the right momentum based on these issues. It frustrates them. They have to deal with the client, have to apologize, things are taking too long. They don't need that kind of hassle. And those delays are frustrating clients because they won't really understand why their project is late or potentially late because of these kind of issues. And developers themselves are getting frustrated. So this is where the well-being impact really kicks in. And so even simple tasks are taking too long and developers start to worry about their effectiveness as a developer. They can write code, but the environment's not helping them. And developers begin to think, well, am I expected to know how to fix this? So that's another impact on their well-being. And that problem is amplified quite significantly for remote workers. Right, in the last few years, many agencies have gone remote or are employing more and more remote developers. Now, if you're a lone developer sitting in your kitchen or at home working for a company remotely and you have these issues, then you really do feel as if you're on your own, right? And that has an impact not just on the projects, but also on your own mental health. And employers have been, I think, quite slow to recognize that reality. So, how do we improve our DX? Well, it's easy. We have to standardize the toolbox. So, let's have the same tools used in the same way by everybody in our company. So that's one way we could do it. It doesn't eliminate the problems if you do that, but at least the problems are consistent because it's the same kind of problems with the same tools and they're easier to fix. So that's one way we could do it. But maybe there's another solution as an agency. Maybe we buy everybody the same computer with the same operating system, with the same software, and we only take on new clients who agree to have the same requirements. Well, that's crazy because that's not feasible. That's never gonna happen. Every client has got different requirements, different projects. It's just, crazy to expect us to be able to standardize in that way. And, although I've got my ATOC logo on here, really I'm talking to you as OnTap because OnTap have been delivering projects from the very beginning of Magento. We've delivered hundreds and hundreds of projects from small up to very, very big. And we have experienced these problems. I'm sure everybody else has experienced these problems in varying degrees in the room as well. And so over those years, we've looked at ways that we as an employer can influence better outcomes for DX. And it took some time and we nearly solved it. We didn't at first, but we did eventually learn how to solve this, at least for us, and that's part of what I'm going to share today. The biggest thing that we learn is don't expect developers to fix this. It really isn't their problem. And the reason we also shouldn't expect developers to fix this is because developers they vary. You're all individuals, you've got different skill sets, different experience, different geographic locations, different temperament. Some developers are happy to delve into these kind of things. Others really aren't for various reasons. Different developers have different hardware. But some developers do have all the skills required to do it their own way, right? Regardless of whatever projects you throw at them, you know that developer will always be able to get their environment up and running quickly and efficiently. But those people are rare, right? In my experience, they are rare, but they do exist. So, what we thought was that remote development environments were our big hope. So this is really where developers, obviously still using their own laptops or desktop PCs, but really the development tools that they're using on the computer are very thin. So like a thin client. There's not really much substance to the project that exists on their computer. It's really in some remote server somewhere in the cloud. That's really what remote development environments are. And we thought that was a way that we could standardize the tools and not have developers' own PCs being part of that equation, because we recognize for experience that equation with their PC being in that was the biggest thing that caused issues and how that was set up. So in this way, as I said, the development occurs in a remote server, not locally. And each developer connects to that environment using their internet connection. So you do need to be connected, and you normally do that via an IDE, your existing PHP Storm or VS Code, and it's an SSH session that is being used to facilitate that connection. And so very little of a project is actually stored on the developer's computer. Now, if you're using something like PHP Storm, then doing a project locally, long indexing when you get a new project, slow your computer down, maybe can't even work. And that's probably because you've got lower spec hardware. You know, if you had the fancy PC, it'd be quicker, but you don't. With remote development, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing because it happens somewhere else, normally on a much faster, higher spec computer. And so it's not really dependent on your local computer's operating system. You know, it's not about, you know, I can't get Docker working on Windows, or I can't get this working on a Mac, for example. And, you know, probably, are people using Docker for local development? Yeah? And there's some great solutions out there. Mark Schurst's solution for Docker is great. If you're using Windows, not so great, right? And these are the kind of the contradictions that we have as a developer, in that some tools are fit for purpose in 80% of the situations that we work in. But it's the 20% that we need them to work in, where if there's a problem, it's a big problem, right? So by having a remote development environment, it doesn't matter what we use. Right? We've got developers using Chromebooks, right? So like $300 Chromebooks who are getting better performance out of remote development than somebody with a high-spec PC running Windows. So what we found was it showed promise. It allowed a diverse range of scenarios for our developers, and that the environment issues became a thing of the past. Developers are happy, PMs, the project managers are happier, clients are happier. The deliverable dates started not to be affected. Less wasted hours, company happier, right? So we can bill more hours to our client. So what we tried solutions like GitHub code spaces, JetBrains Space. As well, we've tried Gitpod. There's a great, you can't really see it on there, but there's a great tutorial for using Gitpod for Magento actually on there. Amazon actually have a solution called Cloud9 as well for remote development. And we tried many of those and others as well. All had their pros and cons. And the problems that we found in that was that converting new projects to some of those solutions to get them on board was difficult, and it still required really specialized DevOps experience to get that done, and that took hours. But the solutions were more developer focused. They're not agency focused, and some of them weren't even PHP focused. But cost was the biggest problem, because it's great in theory, in practice, you know, if it works, but what about the cost? You know, we have to factor that in. And so Gitpod was actually the most promising, but for 50 developers, that's $3,000 a month. And other solutions were even more expensive. And for $50 for Gitpod, it actually goes to more like $6,000 if you have higher spec remote servers. So there is quite a significant cost there. So in the end, we did actually solve it, but it did take some time. But you know, these problems are worth solving because we remove so many of the day-to-day issues. We still felt the biggest issue, other than cost, was setting things up. We waited for the right solution to come along after trying these others, and it didn't. And we were getting quite dejected, actually, that our big hope wouldn't pan out for us because the cost wasn't coming down. So what we did in the end, we decided to build our own, right? And many of you might have tried similar things before. So this is our experience very quickly. So because we had in-house experience to do this kind of thing, and we have the infrastructure to support things 24/7. We've got developers all over the world. These are all important considerations here. And over about a 12-month period, we evolved something. And we started talking to partners and clients about that, and they become interested in that. So that was really the catalyst. And you know, as well as using it internally, we decided to launch this as a service. And we call it Cloud DX. There's a URL there that you can go and look at. It's more information. But we built it for PHP, but not just Magento. So it supports Shopware and WordPress and Laravel. Xdebug is supported right out of the box. The biggest issue we had with getting a new project onto the platform was that that was taking too long. We've got that down to about 30 minutes. and a mid-level DevOps person can do that. You don't need the guru anymore. And we made it developer-friendly in that some of those other systems you used an IDE in a browser. Don't know whether you've seen that before, but it's not a great experience. With this, you keep your local IDE, so you're using the tool, the main tool, as normal, but everything else is out there in the cloud. So what that means is existing projects can be cloned and be up and running in 2 to 10 minutes. That's all it takes. And an empty environment, so that might just be a specific version of Magento, you can create that in about 1 to 3 minutes. So the biggest wins was that we made it simple for non-technical users. We have our QAs and project managers creating their own environments and cloning projects. Right? We've got it so that it's not a developer thing anymore, having a development environment. Right? QAs can do that now. We made it so simple. Even our clients can spin up their own projects in their own environments very, very simply. And it's not just for projects of vanilla environments. So if you want a specific version of PHP with a specific version of Magento, you can do that. You want 20,000 test products, 50,000 test orders. It can deliver all those in a minute. You need a shopware site. It does that as well. You know, we've made it quite flexible. And we've empowered our team to be more productive, more self-sufficient, and able to try things on their own without being limited by their hardware. But we still have staff who do it their own way, don't want to use this solution. That's fine. But for everybody else, they use this solution, and even the gurus in our company still switch back for some projects. So I'm going to do a really quick demo for you. I'm not going to use the Wi-Fi because that will probably go wrong. What I will show you is cloning a project. And this is just a video. And you're not going to be able to see that, are you? Can anybody read what's on the screen? No. Okay. Well, in that case, I won't do a video. But basically, we have what you're seeing there in like 8-bit pixels is a command line where you run a command. It asks you some questions, like which project do you want to clone. You paste in a GitHub URL or GitLab URL, basically your Git repository. It then asks you where your database snapshot is. So that's the URL somewhere, you paste that in. It asks you which Git branch you want to branch from. So it could be master or specific branch. And once you've done that, it will do an entire installation for you. I'll just skip through this. But it will do that in about 4 minutes. And that's an entire project for a client. Completely customized, hundreds of modules, lots of data in the database, many years worth of transactional data, and it takes about 4 minutes. You can do the same with vanilla environments as well. If you're using PHP Storm or VS Code, Xdebug is enabled by default. So you can have developers onboard a project in a few minutes and immediately they can debug it. There's no setup of Xdebug required. It does all that for you. And what we found was that really accelerated project delivery. And I think the last final slides that I will skip to, if it lets me. We provide like MailHog, if you use MailHog, PHP MyAdmin, Mage Run 2 are fully integrated into that as well. So you've got all the tools you need without having to install anything. And you can put special tools in special projects if you need to. Everybody gets an isolated SSH environment. So we charge that $25 a month per developer. That's all it costs. They get really powerful. They basically get a really powerful computer, but not in their room. It's in the cloud. We've got full documentation, Slack channels so people can ask questions, and there is an offer. Anybody can try this for free. Just come to our booth and we can figure that out. because we want everybody to get as good DX as we have for our clients. So we've got these free trials. So ask them before. That's my email address as well. So now we can say the toolbox is the solution. You've just got to have the right toolbox. That's the key thing. Standardization is the key. Remote development does abstract the complexity away and to the point where it's no longer relevant what your hardware is. We still value local development environments. Still use those, no problem. Agencies are more profitable. Developers are happier. You can buy cheaper hardware, more confidence, and problems are solved more easily. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan, for your insights on the importance of developers' experience, right? We would like to know from the audience if they have any questions and they want to shoot to Dan, and I believe Dan would be happy to answer them, right? So anyone from, yes, please, can. Hello. I would request you to first please introduce yourself.
Yeah, myself is Vishal Nyati. I'm running a Magento development agency, magento360.com.
Okay.
So, as mentioned, it isn't a problem of every agency or even every developers, right? And there are tools available in the market that is like a Warden, which is free to use. Those are providing like the similar stack that you can change the PHP, Elasticsearch, and everything. So the problem with them is they're using Docker in the background, which is consuming lot of system resources. Like you must be having at least a 16 GB of RAM to run it quite efficiently.
Yep.
So with your tool that you suggested, is it consuming the same kind of memory or?
Yes. It still uses Docker.
Right. Okay.
But because that's on a server somewhere else, you don't have to worry about the local machines having the right kind of resources. It means that you can use cheap hardware, but still get huge power from that. And obviously they're on fast internet connections as well. So commands like Composer install that might take a long time to process locally.
Right.
Those are just pretty much instant.
Okay.
And
So
very quick.
So this solution is something on a remote environment.
Yep.
Like it's okay. We can connect it through the SSH.
Yeah, through your normal IDE, yeah.
Okay. Or in the backend, like it's Docker, but we don't need to take care about those extra hardwares on the
Correct,
system.
yeah. That's all handled.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Anyone else who is having question? The man in the second row, please. Can someone please give him a mic?
Hello. My name is Satish Ashilwar from Dentsu. My question is how the data security will handle in this case, because most of the customer is very concerned about where the things is going on. Security. I mean, where this code it get deployed.
Yeah, so we thought long and hard about the security around that, and what we do, we ensure that the SSH connections are at least on a deny-only basis to begin with, and then if you've got like a VPN, then we're whitelisting a few IP addresses to connect through that. So the data is still secure there. It's as secure as the hosting that client probably has anyway. Individual environments, you might want your client to be able to access. So you can make a particular environment, the front end and the admin panel, accessible to anybody if you want to, permanently or temporarily. And I didn't get a chance to demo that, but it handles the security there as well. Each of your developers basically gets their own server. Only they have access to that, unless they themselves give access to somebody else. It could be another developer, because you can actually collaborate as developers on the same remote environment if you want to. But security needs, quite rightly, to be built into that kind of solution, yeah.
Thank you so much, because I believe security will be concern of anyone's company.
Of course,
so
yeah.
For sure. Thank you for your answer. Yes, please.
Okay, so sorry for my voice. With local environments, you can run code checks, you can run integration tests. How about your environment? If developer finishes his work before commitment, does he need to run his local environment in order to execute integration tests, or you also cover that on your side?
So that depends. So if we're talking about, first of all, code standard checks, you know, as one form of testing, then those can be run remotely. So those environments have PHP-CS, PHP-Stan installed. So you can run those kind of tests as you would locally, but remotely. If you're doing any kind of integration tests, so any kind of test framework, whether that's Magento's MFTF or something else, then you'd still expect to run those in the remote server. You can install software into those environments that you might need in order to run those tests. So we've made it so that developers really don't need any software locally other than an IDE in a browser. You know, as I said, they can use a Chromebook, really cheap hardware, in order to do their job from anywhere they want to do it from as well.
Thank you so much. Yes, please. Can you please pass on the mic to him?
Hello, thanks Dan, thanks for the presentation. So we came to know that the price is the main pro of your solution compared to the available solutions. What con you would like to tell us, like if we compare your solution with the other Gitpod and other available solutions, what are the drawbacks? Like, how can we decide like we should be going with ONTAP and not?
You should try it.
Okay.
Try and then,
You should try it.
then you'll
Yeah,
know
but
it.
if any cons you can highlight. Yeah.
There's no. What we built was fit for purpose. We couldn't find anything else that was quite fit for purpose. That's just the reality of what we found. So there probably are drawbacks, but those drawbacks are very small compared to the problems it solves. You know, you can never have a system that's perfect, I believe.
Thank you for the answer. Thank you. I believe even if you want to compare, once you need to try it, and then you'll be able to pass on any judgment, right? So, yeah. Right.
And if there's any more questions,
Yeah,
come
please.
and talk to me in the booth. I think we're over time now, but come and talk to me in their booth. I'll
Can
be
we
happy.
take one last question and
Yeah,
then we
if
can?
there's one last question.
Please. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Varun Rajiguru from the Ahmedabad and from the Elsner Technologies. So my question is that like we need to provide create the different users for the like different local environments from your system. For the or like if you are creating the staging environment, so I can add the multiple users with the like how much I can provide the access and like that.
Yeah, each user gets their own server, and that server can support many multiples of environments up to the resources of that server. So you can install as many environments there as you have disk space, and you can run as many simultaneously as you have memory to do. And each server is per user, and you can have multiple users there, so multiple servers.
Yeah, and some of the agencies insist like that you should not work on the local environments. So if you are using in the Docker, so how much successful is Docker for the local environments?
For local environments, Docker can be very successful.
Yeah, as we are working with the Dockers, so I guess that the best things for the local environments only, because some of the agencies insist that the first you should work on the local environments only, and then we can get up to their servers and like that.
Yeah, so the best Docker environments for Magento are Mark Schurst's solution, which is available on GitHub, Valet Plus and Warden, which somebody mentioned. Those are probably the best, but there are drawbacks in using some of those with some platforms. But that's the point. DX can suffer dependent on the variables of the developer's own hardware and setup. Whereas what we've got, it doesn't matter. Anybody can use it.
Okay.
I think we're done.
I guess he answered your question, right? Okay, thank you so much, Dan. And if anyone else, please give a big hand for Dan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.